We're doing ourselves a quick down and dirty video, and I want to talk about your weapon attributes and your weapon power rating, or your item rating, whatever you want to call it, and how they affect your damage, your weapons, your attributes, everything, because it's a little cryptic, right? It doesn't make much sense when you jump into the game. So what we're going to take a look at here for this character is this level 170 Katachan Mark 1 Devil's Claw Sword. It's crap. It's not good. I've had it for a long time, but I kept it for a long time to exemplify this point. So if we go to Psychanium, we can see the DPS that our weapon does. So we're going to go ahead and swing this. So if you take a look here, the overall DPS is 58 right there. Die. 62. Do one more. Come on, man. 56. So this is a 107 power rating weapon. Now, the power rating on the weapon does not increase its damage. So here's a 237, so quite a little bit more here. And we're going to talk about how this changes things. So you're going to see it should be roughly the same. I had a crit hit there, 137, but here's 50. There's 110. And I'm going to explain why it's also kind of a little bit higher in a second here. 162. But overall, the damage on these weapons will be roughly the same. What is making this claw sword do more damage is not the item rating. The item rating does not dictate the actual DPS of this sword as far as its raw capability. What the item rating does is determines these sliders. So you can see if I look at this claw sword by comparison, you can take a look side by side. The reason that this Mark 1 Devil's Claw Sword is doing more damage than this is because the damage here is higher. If I were to get a Mark 1 170 rating with the exact same damage right here, it would be very similar in its damage profile. But the item rating here is what basically is a currency, if you want to think of it. And that currency goes towards allocating to each one of these individual bars. So if I were to test these two weapons out, well, it does change the fact that this is a heavy sword. But if I were to change these two weapons, you can see they have different damage sliders, right? So that, of course, means that this one's going to do less single target damage. This one's going to do more single target damage, but they have almost comparable, a little bit of a gap right there, in their cleave damage. So the item rating, think of it as a currency, and it goes to each one of these bars and how they actually increase the damage of the actual weapon. But if we were to say, looking at two weapons again with the exact same damage and the exact same locations, they would do the exact same amount of damage. Now, what these individual weapon attributes do is also different. So damage here is the overall damage of a weapon. It kind of makes sense, right? This is kind of, think of it like a modifier on the raw single target damage of the weapon. That's probably the easiest way to kind of visualize it. Mobility is going to be the dodging related bonus. So an axe like this, take a look at that mobility bonus. So I'm going to show you. We've got this sword on, and I'm going to dodge. I'm going to use this pylon as a kind of like an example. Just dodge once to the right. So we just kind of landed right here. This line is about where we landed with this sword. If I swap this over to the axe, watch, I'm going to go nowhere. And I dodge to the right, lining up on this center portion just about. See how much further we went? If that was our mark before, we're now all the way over here. So mobility is basically a bonus towards your actual dodge capability in the game. Let's look at some more here, and I'll kind of go through those. Cleave targets versus cleave damage is also interesting. So cleave targets is how many targets your melee weapon will pass through. So if this target is low, because almost all melee weapons do have the capability to cleave targets. It's based off of these little buttons right here. So this is a cleave, that is a strike down, that's kind of a cleave. It's kind of like it's an in between both a cleave and a strike down. It's a horizontal slash, or that is not it, a diagonal slash is what I meant. But cleave targets, having this be a higher number, it'll cleave through more targets. Do I have one with low cleave? Oh, I do have one with low cleave target, and it's this guy. And of course, this thing, I don't even think it has a, so if that hit 3, right? Let's switch back on over to something with a high cleave target. There, that guy's got a high cleave target. if I was far enough forward, I would have hit this guy too. But that cleave target is basically the amount of targets you're hitting. Cleave damage is the damage dealt to enemies after the first target in a swing. So this guy got dealt 100 damage. This guy got dealt 58. That guy got dealt 35. These guys should be a little bit easier to show. 150, 38, 26, 26. So higher cleave damage means that the damage that follows through more succinctly, I guess you want to say. I don't know. There you go. 125, 26, 38, 23. So things with lower cleave damage as an actual slider here will do less damage after that first hit. Finesse, I think that's on... Yeah, here we go. Finesse is headshot weak point damage multiplier. So taking a look at this has got very high finesse, right? Because this is a combat blade. This is meant to single target stab things to death at 2 brute. So you're going to want stuff like that, followed by first target. This is damage to the first target in a swing. So these two things in conjunction mean I'm going to be doing a lot of damage to targets, especially, of course, specials and elites, which is what the combat blade is focusing upon. Defenses, which I think is on this. Defenses was on one of these. Here we go. Defenses is basically stamina used when blocking. High amount of defenses on this will basically decrease the amount of stamina that it takes you to block any kind of attack. Stopping power is the amount of target is staggered by attacks. And I don't think that's on any of these. It's probably going to want to switch on over to this. So stopping power on your range weapons is the amount the target is staggered by attacks. Your rating also does affect that as well. Higher rating, if I were to have this las gun at 100, the stopping power attribute obviously is going to contribute to this, but let's assume that they both have the exact same stopping power slider. The higher item rating will have a better chance to stagger, or a little bit better of a stagger overall. Stability is the recoil / sway, so right over here. That's why I really like the Cantrail 1A, because they'll always has really good stability versus, like, you know, the infantry auto gun. The braced auto gun is like my favorite gun though. It's so damn good. Or to take a look here at the bolt gun, it has very low stability, so it sways a lot when you're trying to shoot it down sights. And this is particularly for aiming down sights. Ammo, ammo is a bonus to the ammo, but keep in mind this is kind of a little buggy. Sometimes you'll see that this is really high, but your ammo is lower. Like this is pretty well reflected, right? Low bar 80, high bar 96. So some of these sliders might actually be a little bugged. I'm just trying to break down at least the ethos behind them for you. Also, you've got crowd control, which is the ability to stagger foes. You'll find that on shield weapons. Collateral, which I don't think I have on any of these, is basically penetration capability for range weapons. And there's also penetration for your chain weapons, your melee weapons, of course, which is just going to be absolutely brutal. Penetration is different than cleave target, because penetration is more damage, and it basically allows the hit to completely carry through, rather than cleave damage is just simply, okay, I'm going to add more to the damage that you do when you do your first initial swing. Also, I think this does, yeah, there you go. You can, penetration actually allows it to keep following through with the activatable, where otherwise it would just stop, like that. So those things are kind of just worth noting. And I wanted just to quickly do this video to help break down how these attributes really work, and how item rating works. That's told to us by Hedge, the community manager over at Fat Shark, because a lot of people are asking, what the hell is item rating? Again, remember, just simply, it is a currency that is used to spend on these little bars, and these little bars then have all these kind of different bonuses on your weapons. Another thing kind of worth noting really quick before we close, keep in mind your perks, or whatever you want to call these traits, these perks on weapons, have different magnitudes or levels. And if you look over here, you can see those magnitudes reflected by these little hash marks. Okay. Oh, damn. I thought I had a different version of Rev Up. I had it on a thing in the store. So there is the no hash marks. Then there's 1 hash mark, then there's 2, then there's 3, then there's 4. I think 4 is the max I've seen. So here's 3 hash marks, as you can see, just these little kind of fringes on it. And it just means that usually the percentage values here are more, or there's just more damage or whatever it is. So this is 3.5% crit chance for 5 seconds on a successful dodge. I think the single hash mark is like 3% or 2.5, whatever it is. I'm saying that those little marks there denote an increased magnitude of an existing trait within the game. Another little bit about item rating is that your item rating in the market or in the timed acquisitions is linked to the max item level that you've got across your best melee weapon, your best range weapon, and your best curios. So even if you don't plan to use that range weapon, this is a really good example, buy the one with the highest rating so that you have at least one item in your inventory that has the highest rating possible for that category. For example, again, this and this, these are two items I plan not to use, but this will allow for better items to populate, perhaps legendary, perhaps purple, and they'll kind of increase that across the board because you'll continue to get better and better weapons. So if you've noticed your item rating stagnating, it's because you're not doing this to increase the rating across the board. So hopefully this breaks down the mysticism of traits, of attributes, and of your perks whenever you're dealing with your ranged and your melee weapons in Warhammer 40,000 Darktide.